So look, I think there was a lot of ambition during last year's Upfront. I think the market understood that some of those currencies were not necessarily ready to be transacted. So it was very much trial, a couple of testing. I think that the market will be much more ready to use these things in the upcoming Upfront. We know that there are networks running, building rate cards off of them, deals in place. So I think we're just going to see more use of alternative currencies. And as I said at during yesterday's panel, I think one of the things we need to think about is, are we expecting them all to do the same thing, or do we really want each of these companies to think about areas of specialization? Maybe one is focused on alternative currency being reach and frequency of a campaign. So I think there'll be a little bit more market shakeout in terms of that versus having a bunch of companies really doing the same thing.
That's interesting. So in that environment, what do you see as missing from cross-platform planning and activation?
Yeah, so look, I think everybody sort of acknowledges that there are not linear-centric people or linear-only people or streaming-only people or digital video-only people. And that linear is going to continue to be a big part of every marketer's or most marketers' media strategy. The thing we need to start thinking about is the fact that linear TV can be forecasted at an impression level. And if you have those forecasts at an impression level, what you're able to do is make sure that when you're running anything that is addressable, it's reaching the people that linear is not reaching at all, or people who are only getting light levels of reach and frequency. So it's really about thinking about linear TV, forecast it, and measure it on an impression basis, and then integrate it, use those signals to integrate with anything being done addressably.
There's a lot of talk about optimization and or outcomes-based optimization. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, look, I think it is. I think it's incumbent on media sellers to understand not only who is watching their networks, the demographics, what audience targets they're in. But I do think it's important that media sellers understand how effective different parts of their inventory is at driving different outcomes depending upon the advertiser and the vertical. Is a key thing that was talked about on the panel before lunch that I think everybody acknowledges that the creative an advertiser puts in the market carries most of the weight in terms of campaign success. So, I think it's a bit of an overreach if a media company wants to actually guarantee an outcome, but for a media company to optimize against outcome-based signals and be held accountable to how that schedule does versus a baseline schedule, I build a plan and I ignore those schedules, is a place where I think media companies are in the safe zone. They're responsible for what they control, which is the placement of impressions, and they're not taking on too much risk. So, and I think the industry needs to be doing more in that arena.
Okay. Well, finally, Howard, looking ahead to the next 6 months to a year, is there anything that you expect to see or you hope to see in this space, or anything particularly worrisome or keeps you up at night?
Well, what keeps me up at night is the industry not making progress. One of the other things we talked about, through the last night and tonight is the consumer experience with watching ads. It's challenged in CTV and AVOD. It's challenged in linear TV. And you put that two together, and basically it's meaning that, we're not building a great ad experience for consumers that work for consumers as well as works for advertisers. I think we all have instances where there's certain brands where you're just seeing too many ads from those brands. And if we don't find a way to make advertising desired and a great part of the TV experience, and understand that doing that means solving cross-platform, we're just going to continue to drive consumers to ad-free environments. It's not going to help marketers. It's not going to help the companies that invest in content and are trying to monetize it partially through ads. So I think the thing that worries me is we don't make progress where we know what's ahead of us and we know what we need to do.